Hello everyone and welcome to another video here in the channel. Today we're going to talk about a very interesting topic, and that is PC building. I've been building my own PCs for the past 13 years. I build them for myself, I build them for my academy, I've even helped my students build their own computers, and I think this is a skill that everyone who's doing 3D should have because it will save you money in the long run rather than going to a store and buying a pre-built machine, and it will help you understand like the important things that we're looking for when we are working on 3D softwares. So today I'm gonna guide you through the important parts on building a budget PC, a professional, or I would say like good, really good, strong PC, and my dream PC, like the biggest PC you can find. And you're gonna see the difference in price, the difference in components that we're picking, but this video is meant to teach you the kinds of things that we're looking for when building a PC. If you have questions, please let me know down here. If you have opinions or comments about some of the pieces or parts that I picked, that's also something good to talk about, so make sure to leave it down here. And let's go. So let's start building our main computer right here. And of course we always want to go for the fancy stuff, for the good looking things, but one thing that I want to make very clear on this video is that you actually don't need all of these bells and whistles to have a powerful computer. In studios, like if you're working on an office and they are giving you the PC, they're not going to bother with RGB stuff and things like that. They're going to give you a plain simple computer that has all the powerful components that you need, but it's not going to be like gamer PC setup, okay? Now if you want to do it for your own, that's fine. Now the site that I always recommend is this one right here. It's called PCPartPicker, and the main reason why I recommend this, not because you're gonna buy from them, even though you can like get the specific listings, but because it will allow you to make sure you pick the right things. A very common issue that I see people when they build their first computer is that they will buy a CPU that's not compatible with their motherboard, or they will buy specific types of RAM because they want the biggest numbers and they're not going to be compatible with their motherboard. So all of those things are important. I always like to start with the CPU, which is one of the important parts, and in this first build we're going to do a budget build. Like let's say you just want to start with 3D and you want to go as low as possible but still get good performance on your softwares. There's two main things you're going to have to decide here. Do you want to go AMD or do you want to go Intel? Now personally, I've started using Intel when I first started like 13 years ago, but after about 5 years, I actually switched to AMD, and I've been using Ryzen's ever since, okay? So the Ryzen generations are named depending on this first number. So Ryzen 5 is 5th generation, Ryzen 7 is the 7th generation, and then you're gonna have the next number, the 775, and that will tell you how many cores it has, okay, so how many little brains it has. So for instance, this Ryzen 5, it's a 5th generation, 560, it's gonna have usually one more core, so it's 6 cores as you can see right here, which is gonna give you a good clock speed right here, which is the processing power of this specific processor. This one right here is the newest one. It's actually the best one. We're going to use it on the best build in just a second. But this one is Ryzen 7 7800, and this one has 8 cores, and it's going to give you a very whopping 4.2 gigahertz on the powering when it's just on the base like clock speed. If you like overclocking and things like that, you can push it all the way to 5. Anyway, so for this budget build, I would recommend this one, the AMD Ryzen 5 5600. Because it's going to give you a good amount of cores, and you always want to look for at least 3.2, 3.4 gigahertz on your clock. If you're on the Intel team, you're going to find the Intel i5 and i7, which again is the number of cores. As you can see, this i7 has 20 cores. It's a bunch of them, but the price is also going to be a little bit higher. And this second number is the generation. So this one's 12th generation, and this one's 14th generation. We tend to think that the newest generations are always the best, and even though they will have the most advanced technology, sometimes generations from a couple years ago are perfectly fine, okay? Now, I strongly recommend you avoid things like this very old Core i3 12th generation, which as you can see barely hits our mark, and just based on the price, you're gonna know that the performance is not gonna be as good. So for this budget build, let's start with this AMD Ryzen 5 5600. There we go. Now, this is important. Some processors will have what we call integrated graphics cards. So it will have a specific like graphics cards chip inside of the motherboard, or inside of the CPU, sorry, and that will allow you to have display. In this case, since it has a little X right there, I don't think this one has it. I believe the X tells that this one does not have one. So you are going to need a video card, which we're going to choose later. And independently, even if you do get a CPU that has a little graphics chip, you always want to get a graphics card for the kind of stuff that we're going to be doing. I'm going to show you some very quickly in just a few moments. So CPU cooler, you can go with liquid cooling and things like that. To be honest, for Ryzen stuff, they do tend to get a little bit on the high temperatures, like they run hot. That's what they usually call it. It's not really that big of a deal. You can go with something simple like this Cooler Master Hyper. You can go with like a Noctua Chromax. As you can see, the price difference can be a little bit intense. As long as you're not going to be doing heavy overclocking and you're not trying to game at like 4K, 3 screens and things like that, just a basic one for 3D is going to be more than enough. So for instance, again, to keep it simple, I'm going to go for this Cooler Master Hyper right here. So it's going to give us a nice element right there. Here's the important part, motherboard. And this is the cool thing. Since we picked our CPU first, all of the motherboards that we're going to be like recommended over here will be compatible with specific CPU socket, which again is very, very concerning. I've had students that are like, hey teacher, I just bought all of the components. Can you help me build my PC? And then we start building it and it's like, oh dude, you messed up. You bought the wrong motherboard or you bought the wrong CPU. So that's why, again, PCPartPicker, really good option. So over here, it depends again on how intense you want to do or how intense you want to push your elements. ATX and micro ATX is the size of the plate. So if you want to have a small case, you're going to go for micro ATX. And if you want to have a big case, you're going to go with ATX. I recommend ATX because more often than not, ATX will allow you to also have 120 up to 128 gigabytes of RAM. So something like this is perfectly fine. I've been using Gigabyte and MSI. Both of them are good. So for instance, again, in order to keep this in a budget thing, this one right here, perfectly fine. So this is the MSI B5050 Gaming Gen 3 ATX AM4 motherboard. Memory, at least go for 16, guys. At least go for 16. And again, you can keep it simple like this one. RAM is measured depending on the clock speed within the RAM. So as you can see, this one is 3200. And it has 2 modules of 8 gigabytes each, and you're gonna get a very nice effect. As you can see, look at this, $38. This is a steal. Like if I was building a computer, like this would be like an amazing one. You can go with the RGB, as you can see here, but look at how much price it increases. Yes, you're gonna get a higher clock speed as well, so technically you're gonna get a little bit better performance. But based on my experience, the performance is there are like increments of maybe 5%, 8%. You're not gonna see that much of a difference. Okay, so if you're on a budget, then you don't need to go for these super expensive ones. Again, 16 is the least I would recommend so that you can work comfortably within Blender, within Maya, with its ZBrush. So let's add this one right here. Storage. For storage, I have a specific setup that I like to use. I recommend having a good SSD or MM2, which is this one type as SSD, for the operating system. And then I like to have either an extra one for the softwares or a big one for the data, right? For all of the files and textures and things like that. So I'm going to show you again, for a budget setup, I would probably go with this one right here. So like a Crucial P3, it's just a 1 terabyte SSD for the main things. And then I'm going to add additional storage right here. I'm going to add one more. I'm going to add another Crucial P3, another 1 terabyte, but it could be like an SSD. It doesn't have to be a, what's the word, an M2, because not every single element has an M2, like this one right here. Okay, this one, like in this case, you're going to have 2 terabytes of memory. This one, the M2 is going to be for Windows and maybe for some of your main softwares, and this one's going to be for all of your remaining data. If you need more memory, and we're going to see this in the mid build, you're going to need something, well, probably like a hard drive to save a lot of stuff, okay? Video card. This is the interesting one. And I'm going to get a lot of complaints or comments about this. If you're doing 3D, you never go AMD. Even though I went AMD with my Ryzen processor, you never go AMD with graphics cards. Why? Yes, they're a little bit cheaper. Yes, they're very powerful for gaming, but they lack a very fundamental piece called CUDA cores, okay? So CUDA cores is a specific technology that NVIDIA has, and it's a way in how they organize their graphics cards. To be honest, this goes way above my pay grade. I don't understand how this works. But I do know that a lot of softwares, Blender, Maya, Cinema 4D, Marvelous Designer, like a lot of softwares will use CUDA core technology to get even better performance. So you always want to go for NVIDIA, okay? There's a debate on whether certain vendors or certain brands are better than others. The way this works is NVIDIA sells the base chip to the distributors, and then they add specific fan configurations, specific connections, and things like that. So there will be some variation. I personally have used Gigabyte, MSI, and Asus as well. Yeah, that's usually the ones that I use. Even PNY I've used before. So it's up to you. Now, A good entry level one, and as you can see, this is where you're going to be spending a little bit more than what you might be expecting for your budget, would be this, like the 3060 gigabytes. Like I would try to go at least for a 3000 generation RTX NVIDIA card. If you go lower than this, you're not going to have access to RTX, and it will give you a little bit of a hit in performance. So I would definitely try to push it to this one right here. So I'm going to add this one right here, which is 12 gigabytes of video RAM, which is really good. 3060, it's on the lower end of the generation, but still good. Because otherwise, you're going to jump to the 4060. Actually, the 4060, this one's not bad, and it's similar in price. But the fact that this one has 12 gigabytes of memory, I would try to get as much memory as possible, because nowadays, especially games are heavy. And if you're working with Substance Painter or things like that, you will need a little bit more memory. So let's say I'm going to, even though this is the budget build, I'm going to like try a little bit more to get something nice right there. And that's it. Power supply. Power supply is important. Depending on how many components you're going to be adding, you're going to need more power right here. You don't need to go for like 1000 watts if you're not going to be using as much. As you can see right now, our estimated wattage for the build that we have is only 350. So as long as you have at least double what you have right here, you're going to be more than 5. So that means that as long as I have at least 750 watts, is perfectly fine. If you want to be safe and you want to pay again a little bit more for a specific safety feature and things like that, go for it. But in this particular case, I'm gonna go for this one, Corsair. It's a rate 80 plus gold, so that's better than, of course, the 80 plus bronze. Yes, it's $30 extra, but I prefer to be safe right there. Case. Again, we're not gonna go fancy. We're just gonna keep the simplest, easiest case, like this one right here, $69. It's fine. Case is not important. Yes, it visually looks very nice, but that's fine. And that's it. This is the build. I'm not going to count like the monitor and the mouse and your keyboard and all of the headset and things that you're going to be adding. I'm just going to keep it simple with this one right here. So as you can see, our total goes to a little bit under 1K, which is roughly what I would expect for a basic good build. You can go even lower, of course. You can go for an even lower budget build, but then you're going to start suffering with performance. So if you're, let's say, about to graduate, or you're going to start your school and you want to invest in a computer that's going to last you at least for the next 2 or 3 years, this one's really, really good. It could last you, of course, for longer. But this price point right here, I think it's relatively affordable. It's on the good range. Again, it's not like super budget. We can go way lower, but then you're gonna have performance issue. This one right here will allow you to work perfectly comfortably in all of the different 3D softwares. So that's the budget build. Let's go for a more professional build. Now, since we already know what we're looking for, we're just going to go a little bit faster in this case. We definitely want to go for a Ryzen 7, which is going to be like a newer generation, and we want to have 7, 8 over here as well, so that we have more cores as well. If you want to go overboard, but we're going to talk about this in the super high-end like build, you can go with the Ryzen 9, which is like 16 cores. Look at that, it's just crazy. But in this case, like this one right here is perfectly fine. This one actually, the Ryzen 7 7800 has been like consistently being like a top tier CPU for the past couple of months. Even there's a newer generation, I think, and it's not even as good as this one, but close to this one. It's amazing. CPU cooler. Now this one will run a little bit higher or a little bit more hotter because it's a more intense element. So I would definitely recommend to invest on either liquid cooling or something that you can make sure that will dissipate the heat as nicely as possible. I have something similar to this one, to like a Cooler Master, so we're gonna go with this one. So it's liquid cooling for the CPU. Motherboard. We don't want bottlenecks. Bottlenecks is when you have very strong components and then you have a very shitty like a motherboard, and all of that power cannot flow through the motherboard fast enough. You're not really gonna have that issue if you go with this or like gaming plus things, but you might have it if you go with very like low elements like gigabytes. Some of this you will have the issue. So this one right here, I think this is actually the one that I have for my own computer, or if you want to go for something a little bit more intense, here's where you can decide whether you want Wi-Fi or not. I never use Wi-Fi for my CPU. It's always like a wired internet, especially for like streaming. So let's go with this one, like the Asus ROG Strix, which also looks very cool. Memory. In this case, I would recommend to jump to 32 gigabytes at least, but if you can, go all the way to 20 to 64. Like this is going to be a really good one. But again, I'm trying to recommend like a professional build that's not going to be like super intense. So 32 gigabytes is going to allow you to work perfectly fine as well. Storage, here's where things change a little bit. I'm gonna use an M2, like it could be like a simple one like this, Kingston, that's fine, for the operating system and for just like basic files. And then I'm gonna use like a big SSD, like this 2 TB SSD. I usually like to go with this ones right here, so the ones that are not M2, because not every single motherboard has multiple M2 slots. So like, let's see, where do we have it? Has to be something like that. There we go, like this one right here, Samsung 870. It's a 2 TB. It's a traditional SATA drive, so that one's gonna be for my softwares. And then I'm gonna add like a traditional HDD drive. It's gonna be on the big side of things. So I'm looking for HDD. Where is it? Like this one's right here, Western Digital Blue, Western, like some of this. Like this one is way overkill. Like that's 24 TB. That's way too much, but maybe just like a 4 TB. Like there we go. Like this one, Seagate Iron Wolf Pro. So that's a 4 TB like a drive, which again is very similar to what I have right now. I have multiple solid state drives, which are very fast, and I use those for the softwares. And then I got multiple traditional hard drives for all of the data that I'm storing, like all of the renders and things like that. So this will be my memory setup again for a professional build. Video card, this is where I do recommend jumping to the 4000 series. And again, since we're going for the big guys, something like this, like the 4070 Ti Super, is really good. As you can see, we're gonna have 16 GB of RAM. The clock speed is gonna be running quite high, and this one's quite good. The 4080 is also amazing, but as you can see, there's a almost $200 difference in pricing. So it's just, again, a little bit overboard. I personally have a 3080 Ti because I bought it when the 3000 series was going on. So again, this is what I would probably recommend for a good build right here. The 4070 has a really good performance, and you got really good stuff without pushing the price too much. As you can see, we're almost double the size, and we're not even finished yet. We're just missing the what are we missing here? We're just missing the case. So in this case, for the case, we can definitely go with something that's a little bit more fancy, like this NXT. This is a very famous one that a lot of streamers use, which is like the transparent thing so that you can see all the components. So let's add that one right there. And the power supply. Now, again, as you can see, the wattage now has increased 600. We don't really need to go double that, but I would probably want to get closer to like 1,000, to be honest, because if you start adding more drives or if you start adding more stuff to your element, you might have a little bit of a throttling problem. So I'll probably go with this one again just to be safe. So that's it. This is the mid-level, I would say, like a professional build. And as you can see, comparing it to this one, it's double the price, right? But it's also like more than double the power. I would not expect a student to have this setup when you're just learning 3D. It's a waste of money, to be honest. And I've had parents come to me and like, hey, my kid wants to learn 3D. He's telling me that he needs this setup right here. And it's like, no, dude, like if you can afford it, go for it. Like you're going to have an amazing time, but you're just starting. You don't really need this. Like the difference in quality of work that you're going to be able to create is not dependent on the setup itself. The setup will make it easier. It will make things flow a little bit faster and things like that. But you can, and I've seen people, you can create amazing things with very low-end machines in the component side of things, because the artistic like power that you have or the artistic talent that you implement in your creations, that's what really tells you what you need to do. Okay, now we're gonna go, and this is another common question that I guess, like, what kind of computers are people working with in the industry, right? Well, it depends a lot on the department. If you're in just like character modeling and things like that, this is roughly what you're going to be getting. Sometimes I've been in studios and in projects where you have like really shitty computers, unfortunately. But if you're working in simulations, this is where things change. If you want to do simulations of BFX and you're going to require a lot of processing power, you're definitely going to be going with like a Ryzen 9, as you can see, 16 cores right here, or the Intel Core i9, 24 cores right here, because it will allow you to compute more stuff, and your simulations and your like iterations and all that stuff will be way faster. So let's say we have a bunch of money. We're getting like again, like we're getting sponsored, and we get as much money as we want. I'll probably go for the Ryzen 9 right here because of the because I like Ryzen and of the amount of cores. And for the CPU cooler, I would definitely go again with some sort of like what's the word? With some sort of liquid cooling. So I'm gonna go with this again with the Corsair Elite Cap Leaks. There we go. Motherboard, as you can see, it's the same, pretty much the same motherboards. The socket will change. If you remember from our first build, the socket for this one was an AM4. So that means, this is important, if you, let's say, build this one right here and then you want to upgrade, you might be able to upgrade to this one right here, no. As you can see, you won't be able to upgrade to the second tier, not all of the components, especially not the processor, because this one is now an AM5. And this is what happens every time they do new generations of processors, the socket changes, so the motherboard is no longer usable. What I like to do is whenever I do upgrades, I do like tiered upgrades. So let's say I build this computer right here, the professional computer. 2 years after I build it, I will probably either increase the RAM, so go from 16 to 32 gig, or so from 32 to 64 gigs of RAM. I would probably replace the video card as well for a new sort of like series video card. And then 2 years after that, or 3 years, so 5 years after I first build this computer, I will just do a complete change. I will keep the new 64 gigabytes of RAM and the new graphics card that I got, but then I would need to change the processor and this one right here. You can sell the computer because it's still usable, it's still strong. It's just not as strong as it was when you first bought it. Or you can use it like as a media computer for streaming games or things like that. Like it's not obsolete. It's not like you cannot use it anymore. It's just that, as you guys know, technology keeps moving forward and it gets difficult to keep up. So for this one, again, we're just going to use the MSI Gaming Plus Wi-Fi right there. Memory, I'm going to go all the way. So we're going to go to like 128 gigabytes. So we're going to use this G.Skill Trident 64, and we're going to add both of them because as you can see, there we go. Where is it? G.Skill Trident. There we go. As you can see, this and this is what the motherboard is going to tell you how much memory it can handle. And as you can see, it can handle all the way to 192 gigabytes. These are all of the speeds that you can get. So ideally, you could also get like a DDR5 4800. I didn't even check what the speed was with this one. There you go, DDR5 64. Like the clock speed on this one is just like extremely high. So that's great. What am I doing here? Oh, I messed up here. So it's not this one. It's the 64 gigabyte. Is it this one? Yeah, it's that one, right? Pretty sure it's that one. No, let me try again. Yeah, it's this one right here. Sorry. There we go. Those are the same. So as you can see, DDR5, so that's the newest RAM and memory, 64,000 on the clock. So this thing's going to be flying. Storage, I would go again really intense. So I would definitely go for like a big 2 terabyte storage as my main component. I would then go for another like this one right here, like 4 terabytes for all of the softwares and things like that. And then I would go for like a very big, like this one, 16 terabytes. Oh, that's a 16 terabytes SSD. Oof, that's amazing. Well, it doesn't have reviews, so I probably wouldn't go for that one. So, but yeah, like something big that's gonna give me a good amount of like this one right here, 24 terabytes, like a traditional like HDD. That's great, and maybe an extra SSD just to have some more information there. So something like this, 2 terabyte SSD Samsung. There we go. Video card, the big video card right now, like the best video card you can get is the 4090 Ti or 4090 something. That's the biggest, like this one right here. 4090 is going to have 24 gigabytes of memory, bunch of CUDA cores, but as you can see, the price is also like extremely ridiculous, but let's go for it. And that's pretty much it. Let's choose a case. Let's go with this one. It looks very fancy. And there we go. So yeah, you can see here now that we're finished with the building of the whole thing, how we changed between a very basic build right here, which again, it might seem basic, but I know that $1,000 is still on the high end of the spending, but it will give you like a really good solid foundation to start working on 3D. Like you're gonna be comfortable working with this setup right here. Then we go to a more professional one, which is a lot closer to what I have right now, which is not going to give you a solid performance, it's actually going to give you a fast performance. This is why I can stream, I can record, and I can be doing 3D at the same time, and the computer can perfectly handle to what I call the overkill setup. Like if you're going to be doing really heavy stuff, then you can definitely go with this one. I have a student that recently got something similar to this. He spent like around this amount of money. I was like, dude, you're crazy. And he's good. I don't think he really requires this much power, to be honest. But I mean, it's your money. You can do whatever you want with it, and I hope you can make amazing stuff if you get something like this. But this is what I would like consider like the different builds or the different elements that you're gonna need when you're building a computer. Okay, now once you have this, you have two options, as I mentioned, and this is not a sponsor or anything. If you're in the US, you can just buy directly from all of the sites right here, and you're gonna get the price that you get right here. Sometimes they'll tell you if the shipping is free or not. Most of the time, especially again if you are in the US, it is free. But if you're not, what I recommend is print this or have this in a note file or something. And if you're looking for a pre-built computer, even if it's not like an HP or something, like if you're going to someone that builds computers and they sell them pre-built, just look at the components and compare whether or not they work. For instance, here in Mexico, and again, this is not sponsored or anything, but this is where I got some computers several years back for the academy. There's this PC. There we go. So this guy's right here, they do that. They build their own computers and they offer you a package. Look at this. This is like the Threadripper. So as you can see, this is a Mexican peso, so it's about $6,000 or something like that. It's just like ridiculous. More than six. No, it's like 6,000. But yeah, so as you can see, this one right here, this will be like $600, and it might have things that are like close to what we're looking for. So you can check. Oh, cool. They're using a Ryzen. They're using a GeForce. It's a very old GeForce though. So this is a little bit of a not so great idea right there. 16 gigs of RAM. So again, at least this list right here, even if you cannot get these exact same pieces, will help you get an idea of what kind of computer you want to go for, right? Like, again, I'm telling you, these are like the general recommendations, and hopefully we get more recommendations here in the comments of people who have built their computers. But I've been building my computers for the past 13 years. So this has worked perfectly fine for me, and they have given me a really, really good result. So look for sites in your own country or in your own region that build their own computers as well. And you might be able to find things that are close to what I'm recommending here, depending on the price point that you're going for, right? Like the budget build right here, the pro build right here, or like the extreme build right here. So yeah. That's pretty much it, guys. Thank you very much for watching. If you watch all the way over here, let me know in the comments what you thought about this. This is a common question that I get all the time in the streams, like, what computer are you using? And again, the computer is just a tool. Yes, it will give you a nice boost, and it will make it so that it's comfortable to work with all of the softwares. But the secret's not the computer. The secret is you, your skills, your talent, and how you use the resources that are given to you to generate or create amazing things. Okay, so don't forget, always learning, always improving. I'll see you back on the next one.